Hi, friends, welcome back. So, we're going to take the next step of peeling back what the components are in that final product we saw. We saw the Movielens bot framework, and we kind of gave a quick demo on and how the system works, right? So, now we're going to take one step back and kind of see in the Azure portal what are all the resources that make up that bot and how it actually powers the bot, right? So I'm logged into the Azure portal, and I am going to switch to my resource group. So it's a test account. So if you're going to see here, there are multiple resources all plugged into this resource group. And what we can kind of go through here is the main components that are there that make up that search possible, right? So if you go from the top, the first thing that a bot requires for communicating with the users is definitely the bot, right? So this is the Movielens bot. It is actually a type of the Azure bot. So if you try to create a new resource under the resource group and look for Azure bot, that's kind of what you will see. So this is the bot. This is kind of what we have created, and then we'll recreate this so that we can get into real really deep into the process, right? So main thing when you create a bot, the first thing you need to kind of understand is that the bot comes with its own pricing tier, and the pricing tier determines how many concurrent users it can support, etc., right? So bot is very generic. It knows how to interpret the user input, and then it actually always talks to a backend, right? So this is the messaging endpoint. So the bot that we create always needs some kind of a messaging endpoint, right? So to configure the messaging endpoint, we come to this configuration, and then when you click on the configuration, you will see this is where we put in the message endpoint, right? So this is the URL of the application that we have built, and then we'll go deeper into how we built that. But at the end of the day, right, at the endpoint that we are asking our bot to communicate is this one that we have created. So this knows how to take the messages from the user, the different options that we pick, and actually search the index and then give back results, right? So that's important. So this is the first point. And the messaging endpoint is very important, and that's what we customize, right? So other things are not very different compared to bot when you compare from bot to bot. So that's the first important piece, right? So the second important piece that is very important is the Microsoft App ID. So whenever you create a bot, you will have to assign some kind of a bot ID to the application ID to it, and then that's how the Azure Active Directory can authenticate and then make sure that it has all the permissions to talk to backend services and do whatever you're asking it to do. So this is very important. So if you go into the application registration, right? So you can see here now it came into application registrations, and in the application registrations, you are actually creating like a secret. You have an app ID and an app secret. So you'll create both of them, and then this is the password. You will get it only the first time, and how we use this, etc. We'll go deeper into that later, right? So if you go back to configuration here, so that's the most important piece. So first piece is backend, the second piece is the application ID, right? And and then you can say enable application insights, etc. That we have not done here. So then another piece which we want to test out is in the test. So like let's say you built your bot and you want to really test how the bot would really work, right? And then it also allows you to communicate with your backend and then make sure everything is working inside the Azure portal itself, right? So I click on this test bot. So it is going to talk to that. Remember the API that we had in the backend. It's going to talk to that API in the back, and then it's going to show you kind of how the bot would really look, right? So that's the easy way to test. So we can do the same thing again. We can click on cast, and then you can maybe say build header, and same thing. Whatever we saw in the previous video, right, is exactly what it's going to do here. So this is a very quick way of testing and making sure your bot works, right? So you created the configuration, you put in the backend URL, you have registered the application ID, and then you also tested it. Now, how do you really expose it in your application? Usually, right, you have a front end application that is being used by users. And then web chat is, maybe a small section in the main screen, right? So how do you embed that, right? So that is kind of in this channel. So if you go here into the channel, you can see that this bot can be integrated into a lot of these channels, right? You can do a Teams based channel, or you can integrate with Slack, Skype, Facebook chat, Alexa, a lot of things. But for the keeping the demo simple, we'll go to the web chat. If you go to the web chat, this is how you will basically embed the code in your main HTML site, and that is what will allow you to communicate back to the bot. So the most important area here is the secret keys, right? So when you show this key and then you copy the ID. So that's the most important piece, and that has to be hidden. So once you put your secret here, that secret is this, which is when you see this, when you get the show, you copy it and paste it here. And this iframe is what you're going to put it into your main HTML page. So once you do that, it will actually launch the HTML, and then it's going to communicate with this backend. And you will see web chat botframework.com embed Movielens bot. That's the name for bot, and that's your secret, which allows you to communicate, to authenticate with it, and then that's the iframe, right? So hopefully that's clear. So that's the first piece, right? The bot is important. Then if we kind of move back to our resource group here, the next important piece is the backend, right? So whenever you deploy anything backend, so in this particular case, I have picked Java and Spring Boot as the framework. So it's actually nothing more than a web application, right? It's a web application that we have built, and then we have deployed into Azure. So just with any other web application, we have the things that we can kind of expect pretty straightforward. One is the application service plan. The application service plan will basically tell you what your capabilities are, right? You can have slots, like you can see here, apps and slots, and you can do a swapping and a lot of things. App service has its own thing, and you can monitor what's going on. You can set up networking, etc. A lot of things behind the scenes that are going on there. So application service plan is the base. Inside the application service plan, you define what is the operating system you want, etc., right? And then you create the application service that will hook onto that application service plan. So this is that application service. So if you look at this application service, this is the Spring Boot application that we have built, and then we have actually pushed it into the Azure portal using Maven. And now I will cover that in the next section. But the idea is you write your code, and then you are going to do the Maven clean package, and then you will do a Maven deploy into Azure, and it will connect to this application service plan, and it will actually deploy your bot, right? So that's the second piece of the puzzle, right? So you have the application service plan and the application service that is actually running your application to communicate with as a backend and reply back to the bot, right? So then if you go back, in this particular case, right, the Spring Boot application that we have can actually communicate to a lot of things. But in this particular case, what we have done is we've taken the Movielens data, and then we have actually indexed it into a cognitive search. So if you are familiar with search engines like Solar or Elasticsearch, very similar concept, but this is actually given natively by Azure. So this is like the Movielens cognitive search. This is an index that we have created. So again, we'll go deeper into this also, but at a high level, right? So the you will go and create a cognitive search service. So this is also an offering inside Azure. So you go to the search group and say create, and then you will add this service. Again, the service has its own, how many, I'm using the basic tier, but you can have scalability options here, and then you can create more than one read replicas, and you can have partitions. So it is pretty scalable. And then if you want to partition your data and your index is huge, you can set up multiple partitions, and then there are search units which can also control how much you pay and whatnot, right? So we can go into all of that in detail, but at a very high level, so you have this cognitive search created, right? It's a service. So once you create the cognitive search service, then you actually build indexes. So you can have the data that you want to index. That is actually under the indexes tab. So if you click on the indexes here, so you can see here that Movielens is the index, right? So if you click on the Movielens index, that is where actually our data is. So we've taken all the data that came from the Movielens dataset, and then we have indexed that in the way we want, and we'll go through the data formats and etc. But after all of that, we have pushed that in all the documents that we had about the movies, and we have pushed that into this index. So there are about 4,300 movies. You can see here there are 4,390 movies, and total storage is about 13 MB, not a lot. And then each of the documents that we send to the index is also has like a structure. You have a field, right? It has all the fields, etc. We can see that in the JSON format. Here it is. I don't know why it doesn't show up here, or maybe it's too small. It's kind of hard to read here, uh, but it doesn't show correctly. But when you hit JSON, it will actually show you the data, right? Then the cool thing is you can actually create a demo app right from here. It will create a Node.js application, and you can play around with it. But even without doing anything, right? You can actually do like search equals whatever you have here, right? Like maybe Titanic. Like if you search for that, it will actually search for Titanic and then give you the data, right? So if you can see, this is titanicmovie.com, right? So that's a very quick demo of Azure Cognitive Search, and we'll go deeper into all of these keywords, etc. Whatever we can search on. But those are the three components that made up this entire bot. If you kind of put the pieces together, we have the bot itself, which is this one, the Azure bot, and that communicates with the backend, which is this one, right? The movie backend bot, and the movie backend is nothing but a Spring Boot application that, in this particular case, that we are deployed into an application service plan, and then there is code inside the Spring Boot application to actually talk back into the cognitive search, take the user input and search for whatever the user has asked us to do. So that in a nutshell gives you the entire picture of how the bot is put together and how it is actually trying to search for the movies and giving back results based on different things, right? We'll go deeper into each of these aspects, but for now that's should be a good introduction to what we have put together. Thank you.